I'm heading to Culp's Hill, which was the scene of heavy fighting on the evening of July 2nd and into July 3rd. It's an often overlooked portion of the battlefield because the fighting was very inconclusive and really didn't play a major role in the battle. It is kind of an interesting chapter in terms of terrain, tales of valor, and of course the historical importance of the hill itself. The terrain here is very rocky, very heavily wooded. It was a nightmare to fight in under normal conditions, but you can imagine what it was like here after dark. The Union 12th Corps occupied this ground on the afternoon of July 2nd, 1863. They were withdrawn in the afternoon to support Union positions on Cemetery Ridge. So their trenches were occupied by the Confederate division of Allegheny Johnson. Johnson then proceeded to attack at night against the Union remainder on Culp's Hill. You can tell by the terrain on Culp's Hill that it's steep and rocky and treacherous, full of trees and undergrowth. This is not a great place to mount an attack, but it is an excellent place for defense. The Union Army found that out on July 2nd and 3rd. The Confederates, outnumbering the Union Army significantly, just could not take Culp's Hill. Despite multiple attacks, this terrain was just too rough. It was too confusing, and the Union regiments were too thickly entrenched on the high ground here. This is the only portion of the line where the Union Army actually dug trenches. The Confederates just could not penetrate or overwhelm their defenses. On the crest of this hill is a statue of Union General Slocum, who was commander of the 12th Corps of the Army of the Potomac. He is standing over Stevens Battery, which enfiladed Confederate positions as they attempted to charge Cemetery Hill late in the day on July 2nd. This was again nearly a night attack. Began at 7:30 at night until it tapered off around 9. The Confederates swept over this field in front of us, going up towards Cemetery Hill. As you can see, this is not very good terrain for attacking across. The Confederates reached a stone wall. They were being enfiladed by artillery, hitting them in the flanks. There's artillery in the front. Union riflemen were firing from the top of Cemetery Hill. The attack was a disaster, really, before it even began, and many of the Confederates were lucky to escape with their lives. Colonel Avery was the commander of one of the Confederate brigades. And this is a vignette from the book Gettysburg, a battlefield guide. As his brigade neared the stone wall, a ball struck Colonel Avery in the neck, knocking him off his horse. In the smoke and gathering darkness, no one saw him fall. His men pressed on across the wall without him. Knowing his wound was mortal, he took some paper and a stub of pencil and scribbled a note to his friend Major Tate. The note, still preserved in the North Carolina Department of Archives and History, reads, "Major, tell my father I died with my face to the enemy, i.e. Avery." These are the Union defenses on Cemetery Hill. As you can see, they're formidable and would have presented a nearly impossible obstacle for the Confederate Army to surpass. The Union Army, its artillery command was separate from the different corps, infantry corps. The Army of the Potomac had a greater degree of flexibility when it came to deploying artillery, and they turned Cemetery Hill into a fortress just bristling with cannon is really crazy for the Confederates to think that they could take this hill. But for 3 days they tried and were ultimately unsuccessful.